Hello all, Shadowsun here. Welcome back to my channel. Please ignore the sounds you might hear in the background. I have my window open and there's a few people making some noise, so I hope it's not too disruptive. Anyhow, this is part 2 in my blog posts in video form, and I highly encourage every single one of you, if you want to know more information about what I cover in the video, please read the post, because this post talks a lot about cleansing. I want to get into cleansing. I want to talk about my views on cleansing, some tips, and how often to cleanse your crystals. I also list a resource in that post as well to learn more of the physical and geological aspects of crystals. So as far as crystals and cleansing goes, I want to point out that in my last post and my last video related to this, I mentioned that I do not cleanse my crystals often, in that I don't cleanse them every month. At one point in time, I viewed that crystals should be cleansed every month or every full moon, and you can do that. That's not a, bad thing. I just think that there's no purpose in cleansing them that often when some crystals really don't need to be cleansed, but I'm going to go over that in a moment. Cleansing, in my view, is to remove any negative or unwanted energies from the crystal or anything of the sort. I'm using crystal as an example because that's what we're talking about, but you can use cleansing for all kinds of things: cleansing a home, cleansing an object, cleansing yourself to remove any unwanted negative energies. I don't use the term negative or bad or anything like that very often, as I point out in the post as well. I think that cleansing is sort of like cleaning. You can only go so far with cleaning. You can do like I'm going to clean a space, but you can deep clean a space. I feel like cleansing is sort of like surface level cleaning in a way. I didn't mention that too much, but I do feel like cleansing does serve a purpose to help remove things that you don't want, and to bring that crystal back into its alignment, in the sense of having that crystal be in its natural state of being, if you will. Crystal cleansing methods vary. I've read a lot of books, and some of them just straight up contradict, honestly. A lot of things will say you can use salt and water, the sun, the moon. I've even seen someone use rice before, and that's not a bad thing, but you obviously don't want to eat the rice after, because that energy would be all over the place. But I want to touch on the fact that understanding from a geological perspective is important with crystals, because that's going to tell you the physical properties of it, which will then tell you if that crystal can be in salt or water or anything of that nature. And that's important because at one point in time I used a hematite crystal, and I put the hematite crystal in water and it did not go well. I did the same thing with malachite, and the malachite started to corrode. I found out later through physical properties of that crystal, through learning about those properties, allowed me to understand that. So doing your research is highly, highly important. Further, I think it's important to know what method you're going to use beforehand. For example, I use the moon most often if I do not know if the crystal can be placed within water or salt, because I've used both water and I've used salt, and I've used salt in combination. And I find that to a degree, if the crystal is raw or tumbled, it does make a little bit of a difference, in that because the crystal has been tumbled and changed and altered, and it's not in its natural form. Because it's not in its natural form, it's going to change the way that crystal can be cleansed or manipulated in that type of aspects. And I also want to touch on that I believe that it's important to cleanse crystals when you first get them. This is mainly because of several factors. First and foremost, I can expand upon this forever, but you don't know where that crystal was mined from, and a lot of those mining conditions are very harmful to the people doing so. Further, it's really important to understand that there's people handling those crystals. There's people touching the crystals at the store. There's people putting them in boxes. There's people shipping them. We can go on and on and on. Those things have an energetic component to that because you've got energy from all these people that are touching them. And if you're going to use them, you want to make sure that you are cleansing that crystal for the purposes that you need. So I think that cleansing can aid in this. And I also want to point out one method that I would highly recommend doing research on as well is please be sure not to put certain crystals in smoke, flame, or sun. So for example, amethyst cannot be placed in the sun as the color will fade. I have seen this firsthand. It's not a good time. Also, I highly recommend understanding that the reason you don't put it in some smoke or flame is because some crystals cannot withstand smoke or heat. So that's an important factor to consider. Additionally, I want to get into some tips really quick. The biggest tip I'm going to give you is make sure that you work with the crystal individually, that you build a relationship, that you understand why you're using those crystals and why those crystals are in your life. And I would be also wanting to mention that it's important to do research on what you're going to use the crystal for. And also I want to point out that when I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I tend to believe that crystals have a base sort of natural state, if you will, I learned about that through someone named Hibiscus Moon. You can find the source in the blog post. That she goes over a lot of different things scientifically and metaphysically in terms of her views on crystals, and I used to believe that you could cleanse crystals every month, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I will do that if I'm doing it for a specific purpose, like healing. So for example, if I'm working on healing work for a specific period of time, I will cleanse crystals at a new moon, and I will use those, use the new moon energy to bring in that new beginnings energy, but also the healing energy. Also, if I'm getting rid of something or getting rid of someone, I will use the waning moon energy. But I do believe that if you're cleansing crystals, you don't need to cleanse them all the time. Some crystals really don't need that much cleansing, and again, she goes over all of that. And there's a lot of scientific stuff involved with crystals that a lot of people don't realize. And, you know, for example, smoky quartz is good for electromagnetism and getting rid of electromagnetic radiation, which essentially is all the things that we use have electromagnetic fields to them, and those can affect us because we produce our own electromagnetic field. And as such, that's important to note because you don't want to be bombarded with all the electromagnetic field energy from, you know, your TV, your refrigerator, your computer. You know, we're around screens and electronics more often than ever now. So that's important to consider. I didn't know about the electromagnetism before I tried it out with my computer, keeping smoky quartz by it. Also, for example, clear quartz is used in watches and in computers because it's a good conductor of energy, and it's also a good amplifier. I learned about that because I researched what crystals are used in certain things, and I encourage you to do your own research. So this goes into my final point on crystals and cleansing and how often. I want to point out that though I do believe you can use all of the above methods, you can also use crystals to cleanse. And I know that some people say like certain crystals don't need to be cleansed, and I do believe that some crystals don't need to be cleansed for all kinds of reasons, mainly because I feel like these crystals are formed in such a way that, you know, they're direct linked to the earth, and to me, I feel like they all have their own innate properties, and I think that because they have those innate properties, some are more attuned to, for example, cleansing or things of that nature or protection than others. Granted, that changes when you use it for different things, and that's why I like to experiment and learn what crystals work with what situations. So for example, selenite is often used to cleanse other crystals. I've also used quartz. Now when I use quartz, I programmed or charged quartz for that purpose. So what the difference between cleansing and charging for me is that charging or programming a crystal is imbuing or programming or dedicating that crystal to a specific purpose. So for example, with the quartz, you chose quartz to program the crystal for cleansing because I knew that quartz could amplify the cleansing energy, and also because it's a good conductor of energy. So I used quartz, a few pieces of quartz, but I also used selenite because selenite already has natural cleansing properties. Through experimentation is how I found that out. I also like to use selenite for healing, so I have a selenite wand that I use for cleansing, and and I also use it for healing. But when I use it for healing, I will use it for just healing or use it for just cleansing, depending on the purpose or the type of thing that I'm doing. So I'll have a specific piece of selenite that I use for just cleansing. Further, I've also used, obsidian for protection. I did that for experimentation. So the way you would charge the crystal or program the crystal, depending on who you talk to, it's kind of like setting an intention with that crystal, but you are doing so through different means. So for example, you can use other crystals to charge it. I've used crystals that are like, let's say, clear quartz for amplifying energy, and I want to add energy to it. I will hold the crystal in my hand and visualize what I want that crystal to do. So for example, I'm working on mental health, so I might use a piece of quartz for mental health, or I might be using quartz to help me with pain. So I would align some crystals that are already helpful with healing and use those energies to amplify the charged intention, or I would just visualize that intention, and maybe I want to use the sun or the moon to give you a little bit more of that energy to it from a natural source. So maybe I'll put it in the moon to imbue it with moon energy, or put it in the sun. That's just how I like to do it. I've done it in different other ways as well. Charging and programming crystals takes many forms, and I highly recommend researching. So these are just some of my thoughts on cleansing crystals. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts on cleansing crystals. If you guys disagree, I'm totally okay with it. I love to hear difference of opinions. If you like what you see so far, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And please let me, sorry I keep blinking because of the light. Please let me know if there's anything I haven't covered, or if you want more information on. I'll be happy to share it with you. And if you've liked what you've seen, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Many blessings to you all.